as a lady who broke many glass ceilings and really pushed some boundaries. Why? Given that the case is there on so many levels to get more diversity and as part of that, more women, why is it that we are doing quite a lousy job of shifting that dial? After all, something like 5 or 6% of companies in the US and Europe have CEOs at their helm. And I think in Asia, you know, it's very varied according to what country you're talking about. But really, we're not doing well broadly, are we?
So thank you very much for having me on this panel. It's great to be a retired CEO on a panel about women. And I think this is about the 10th panel I'm doing on women in the last 3 or 4 months. So I'm an expert on this topic. Let me talk a little bit about this. We've been talking about this issue for over a decade or more. And it's the same issue that keeps coming up over and over and over again. We are making progress. I'm not saying we're making no progress, but it's glacial, the progress. So I want to perhaps segment this issue and talk about it in a more segmented way, because I think this issue does require us to talk about the issue in a more nuanced way. I'm a boomer. When I came into the workforce, there were barely any women in the workforce. I remember meetings I was in, I was the only woman in the meeting, and I was the oddity. For so many reasons, I was an odd person. And I had to claw my way up the organization. I had to perform better than everybody else because I was a woman, I was an immigrant, a person of color, everything. But it was a different set of rules that I played with. And there are very few of us boomers who've made it to be CEOs of companies. And that's why if you look at the Fortune 500, there's a very small percentage of women who've made it to the CEO ranks. Our time is behind us. Let's now get to the Gen Xers. There's a lot of women, a lot of talent in the Gen X population. But they are not being advanced at the level they should be advanced. Because people are putting on a diversity pair of glasses as opposed to the best talent pair of glasses. If you look at all the people in your organization and say, I want the best talent to bubble up to the top, there'll be a lot more women that bubble up to the top. So people in power who are making the decisions on who should be moved up ought to stop thinking about quotas for women. They should stop thinking about the fact that women are different. They should in fact be saying, how do I take the best women or best people and move them to the top? We just saw statistics that said companies with women in senior positions do way better than companies that don't have women in senior positions. Investors should be demanding that women are put in senior positions if those numbers are true. If those numbers are true. Why that's not happening is because I believe we haven't yet educated people in power to really look at your talent base in a gender-neutral way. And that's something that we need to do.
So we need to put talent glasses on, rather we need to be taught probably how to do that. But to your point, Harriet, you said you used the expression unconscious bias, and I know you want to talk more about that. We all have that. We're human, aren't we? So how do we stop that?
Yeah, I think we've gone deeply into the human reactions. I think it's more than educating those in power. There are definable reactions that people have. The unconscious bias is every one of us may have it. It may be unconscious, it may be conscious. I'll give you an example of something for myself. But having studied this and trained and helped the organization, many organizations that I've worked for, the skills, the training, the mindset to understand how you react and behave to other women, to people from a background that you don't particularly like. I'm lucky enough to work in 15 countries here, and a country that I always have a tougher time in, actually our own female representation at executive level in Korea is very high, 35%, the norm is closer to 2%. But a couple of days in Korea, I'm feeling a little invisible. I'm feeling a lot of reactions. And quite recently, I was at a meeting, mixed, great people, the very best flourishing in IBM in Korea. And a young man was presenting. and he was quintessentially Korean in every sense, but his English was just not as good as the others, and he was taking a while, and I was impatient. And in that split second, I had a moment to express that in such a way that everyone in the room saw my reaction, or to demonstrate a level of empathy and respect for the fact that he is very different. We were, through my mind mapping, touching on a series of biases, and I had the opportunity to encourage him. Take your time, you know, you want to hear my Korean, it's pretty appalling. And then at the end of the meeting, he said to me, you know, I am taking English lessons, and thank you for that support. So I think this issue of unconscious bias that all of us have, and building that into our understanding for inclusion. Because I think the big issue in the workplace is inclusion, that people can bring 150% of themselves because of who they are. Age, sex, color, creed, sexuality, physical ability. And recently, here in Singapore, I received a lot of feedback that we were not being particularly inclusive of the large population of single men and women who look after and care for their parents as a very primary role besides working for us. So I tend to apply this inclusion lens, and you know, unconscious bias isn't something that everyone else has, and we great business leaders don't. I think it's very important to think about that.